Welcome back to Bitcoin Season 2. This is the metrics, ecosystem metrics, and news update. I'm Charlie Spears of Blockspace Media. Bitcoin Season 2 is produced by Blockspace Media. Check out our other products, our content, the Gort Show, Mining Pod, Writer's Room on Fridays, Bitcoin Season 2 VOD on Thursdays, the Mining Pod, and our newsletter, blockspace.media. Before we get kicked off, I'm proud to say that Bitcoin Season 2 is brought to you by Botanix Labs. Botanix Labs is pioneering a new direction for DeFi with the first EVM Layer 2 running on Bitcoin that's built to be forward secure, decentralized, and share gas fees generated by the network with users. See the future of DeFi from Botanix Labs, botanixlabs.xyz. So again, thank you for joining. This is the ecosystem metrics and news updates where I basically scour the internet so that you don't have to. If you took a break from the internet, first of all, good on you for getting off the screen. It's been a long and hard bear market, but I basically stare into the abyss. I look at this black mirror so that you don't have to. And so I'm going to see what happened in the world of Ordinals and broader Bitcoin Season 2 stuff. So without further ado, we are back, baby. You made it through a bear market. I'm pulling up the Magic Eden past 30-day look here, and you can see it across the board with the exception of two collections, the top 10 collections. Everything is up, and several things are up on the month massively. The 30-day net gain percentage, NodeMonks 41%, Puppet 71%, Runestone's up 10%, OMB 7, Quantum Cats 8, Frogs 57%. That's like the OG Ordinals collection. You do love to see it. And you just keep going down. Like, let's look at the top 50. Yeah, there's some red on here, but your JPEGs, they are up on the month. Don't squander this opportunity. Use it wisely. And of course, this is not financial advice. I personally recommend that you DCA. Let's take a look at the metrics. I'm going to pull up my personal favorite dashboard, which is Data Always dashboard, Dune dashboard. In fact, I'm surprised that more people don't look at this. I will say that I pulled this up and nobody had rerun the charts in, I think, 12 days. I find that I actually think I'm usually the only person actually running the metrics on these charts. So anyway, we crossed over 70 million total inscriptions. This is slowing down a bit. Like if we go down and we look, like inscriptions really did just drop off a cliff after the halving. I'll pull back and I'll say like, hey, consider that, like, I remember back in the day, Casey, the creator of Ordinals himself, thought, well, we might never even, it would be considered a success if we got like 10,000 inscriptions total. Well, even then, we are still getting 20 to 30,000 inscriptions per day. This is not nearly what we saw, the heights of inscription volume. That is in the 400 to 500,000 inscription amount per day. But like, look at this. I mean, if we are just doing several tens of thousands of inscriptions per day, this is still pretty significant in my view. Maybe this represents like a long-term base in demand. Like you might almost call this a base load of Bitcoin Blockspace base load. More on that topic, actually. Let's just go right to mempool.space. If you pay attention to fees like I do, and I'll be talking a little bit about this further today, you can see that we are currently at 6 to 9 sats per VByte. This does represent like a little bit of a spike right now in transaction volume, but if we just look at the overall chart for the past year, we've seen several spikes. The initial inscription run in February 23, March 23, the BRC20 boom of spring 23, and I call it the meta protocol explosion of winter 23 and early 24. Since then, we've seen the mempool pretty much clear off, except for the runes launch at the halving, but we still have a significant amount of like backlog of transactions. But anyway, the spot place where we are right now for fees is 6 to 9 sats per VByte. Just for context, 2 years ago, summer of 2022, we were sitting at 1 to maybe 2 sats per vbyte. So just pulling really far back on the two over the past couple years, we have increased 8 to 9x in like base level fees. So again, that's oversimplifying, but I do think this is pretty significant. The other, I will just linger here a bit more on some charts. I'll look down at this chart. It's one of my favorite charts. It's the monthly inscription share chart. This shows you, of all the inscriptions that are happening, all the ordinals that are being put on chain, what percentage of them are BRC20, which of them are JSON, like the text, which of them are images, like the NFTs that you might buy on Magic Eden. Well, this pink section here is the images, and we can see that in the past week, images, your like conventional profile picture NFTs or art, accounted for close to half, that is 45% of all new inscriptions on chain. That's pretty significant in my view, because like, yes, you can speculate on your BRC20 tokens. That's super fun. I hope your bags go up, whatever. But this kind of gets to the core and the heartbeat of what ordinals really are, which is this thesis of art and putting data on chain. So this is a pretty interesting phenomenon to watch. As I have identified in previous live streams, typically when fees go down on chain, the share of inscriptions, the share of images increases. So we saw this happen this past summer, where in the month of August and September, as fees plummeted to basically like 0 on Bitcoin, we saw the percentage of images and JPEGs increase. So we continue to see this thesis of mine validated, and I think this may be accelerated a bit as the token speculation moved a lot to Fractal over the past month. On the subject of Fractal, while this is not like super directly related to Bitcoin, it does relate to the broader Bitcoin ecosystem and economy, and it has pretty deep implications for Bitcoin's mining dynamics. So I will pay attention to Fractal here. Fractal peaked a couple weeks ago at about $30 some odd dollars per Fractal Bitcoin. It's a separate token on a separate blockchain, to be clear, and it's been declining. It currently Fractal Bitcoin sits about 7.5 US dollars. And activity on Fractal has dropped off a cliff. Just to like, give you a snapshot here. If I'm looking at the Unisat Explorer, each block right now is like only adding about 1 to 3 like Fractal Bitcoin per block in fees. At its peak, like mid-September, this was sitting at like 50 Fractal Bitcoin per block, while Fractal Bitcoin is at like $20 or $30. So we see like fee activity driving Fractal revenue significantly down. I would recommend, if you want to hear more about this, go listen to previous interviews I've done with Lorenzo, or the Bitcoin Season 2 Writers Room with Colin from a few weeks ago, or read the Blockspace.media newsletters that I and other Blockspace contributors have written. So, moving on from Fractal, back to a Dune dashboard. I'm only going to show you one, and that is the volume by marketplace. This is Domo's dashboard. Domo of BRC20 fame. You may not know this. Before he did BRC20, he was actually like a Dune dashboard guy. Domo's like origination is in the like metrics and analytics game. So here's Domo. He made a Dune dashboard for Ordinals, and you can see that the volume by marketplace, this is what the chart we're looking at. The volume by marketplace right now kind of sucks. Like, it's just down and to the right. We are doing maybe, if I'm looking at this right, like $2 million per day in total marketplace volume. This is, and I use the term, anemic. It's like starving. Now, why did I title the name of this stream, You Made It Through an Ordinals Bear Market? Well, I think it's because while the volume might be low, like the collection prices are up, and I'm going to tease this for you a bit. Tomorrow on the Blockspace newsletter, I've just finished up writing a piece on the, like diving into Liquidium data, with partnership from like Liquidium Data Guy to like say, hey, look, it looks like Ordinals users are getting more sophisticated. The liquidations are decreasing over time. So make sure you sign up for our newsletter, blockspace.media. So yeah, the Ordinals market does seem to be recovering. Let's get into the news. I'm done with charts. No more charts. Don't worry. I see Joshua Holt says, can we please talk about magic internet money? I might talk about it next week. I think that's a pretty interesting one. I spent a couple weeks in Asia, Joshua, and it's pretty clear to me that the magic internet money people really in Asia are a very, very strong community. So I have that on my radar. Thanks for bringing that up. In the news, I have the Alchemia trading competition. Now, this might not be on any of your radar, but I think this should be, because a lot of us, a lot of the focus is like, well, I want to inscribe something on Bitcoin, but the fee rates are high. Or like, oh, there's a big mint happening. Oh, this affects Bitcoin fee rates. Well, how do I speculate on fee rates? Alchemia, who I did an interview with, again, a previous Bitcoin Season 2 episode, Alchemia has an interesting way to bet on Bitcoin L1 fee rates. And they have a trading competition right now. It runs for about a week. And I think this is going to be increasingly important in the news cycle going forwards, because when there are spikes in fee rates, when somebody's doing a big mint, or there's some big event like the Babylon chain staking event coming up next week, this can generate fees. And this is a great way to capture Ordinals alpha. That is right. Yes, I'm giving you some free alpha here, which is go hedge your fee rates. Like if you know there's a big mint coming up and you think fee rates are underpriced, go to Alchemia, check it out. I think it's a very fascinating website. We're not sponsored by them. I just think I personally use it to hedge my own fee rates and to take short week to 2 week long positions on fee rates. So they have a trading competition going around right now. They've done 100 Bitcoin in volume so far, and I think the next period opens up October 8th through 9th. Next in the news, one of my favorite accounts, and one of my favorite accounts is the Monk Appraiser. I recommend you follow this. This is someone who does like NodeMonk, like trait evaluation, but they also do a lot of interesting data. And this is an interesting data visualization, basically throwing out a bull thesis for art on Bitcoin. And this basically says we're going to compare other existing markets, like the total addressable market of the secular art market, that is normal art in the real world. What if Ordinals represented a similar share of the market on Bitcoin to the global art market? Well, this is an interesting chart. Similarly, Ordinals market cap compared to Bitcoin's market cap. Let's look at what that would be normalized if it were NFTs on ETH. So all of these three different pie charts tell the story that if Ordinals is to mirror other art markets, either on-chain or in the real world, then we still have several multiples to go to the upside. Yeah, it seems like I'm feeding you too much bull hopium, but isn't that like kind of the job of us talking heads? Like nobody wants to see us making doomer predictions. That's a very short-lived meta. I think, as an optimist, I think Bitcoin's going to go up, and these beta assets, if you will, these Ordinals-related assets, might function as betas to Bitcoin. Monk Appraiser certainly thinks so. Here's a very interesting chart. I recommend you go check this out. So in other news, moving on, everybody is talking about who Satoshi is. There's this HBO documentary coming out. If you hadn't heard about this, then you probably weren't online in the past week. But supposedly HBO is coming out with a documentary which says, we know who Satoshi is. And I'll cut right to the punch. You don't have to watch it. They're going to give you some bullshit answer about who Satoshi is. And they're going to try to point to a specific person, and that person is not going to be correct. But I think this is a good opportunity to look at what we do know about Satoshi, which is not in Satoshi's writings. And I think one of the best examples of this is in what we call the Patoshi pattern. This account, Wicked, W_S_Bitcoin, is one of the best accounts to follow if you are from the Ordinals camp and looking to follow other good Bitcoin accounts. A lot of people wonder, how did we ever figure out how Satoshi owns 1 million Bitcoin, like all the Bitcoin that Satoshi owns? Well, we actually figured out by looking at the blocks that Satoshi mined early on and identifying a pattern. We call this pattern, as I show here, the Patoshi pattern. And if you look at this really cool visualization, we can see this pattern forming, and this is not something I'm going to explain. We can basically identify a fingerprint using what's called nonce analysis and probabilities to say, okay, these blocks were probably mined by Satoshi. And so we can then identify that Bitcoin and where that Bitcoin is in a wallet and say, okay, that Bitcoin is probably Satoshi's. That is how we figured out that Satoshi owns about 1 million Bitcoin. So I highly recommend you check this out. There's a lot of discussion on Satoshi this week, and there was some then unrelated but kind of synchronistic discussion on the Patoshi pattern that I'm showing you here now. So I recommend you check this out. Sergio Lerner identified this pattern, and then other people have improved and verified this type of research, particularly Jameson Lopp. And then Wicked, this, you might know him as the Apple profile picture guy. He has kind of put it together in a very digestible way. So, the last Ordinals related topic is we got another Ord update. We got Ord 0.20.1. That's Ord 0.20.1. It's not a very big update, as Raf says here. If you don't know Raf, he's the lead maintainer of the Ord GitHub. Ord is the reference client that Casey and Raf build, which says we're going to implement Ordinals. And so basically anything new that happens in Ordinals starts here. And so this is, you probably have to be a little more technically inclined, but I recommend, even if you're a degen, follow this stuff, follow Raf, follow Casey, follow the GitHub. Whenever they put out updates, I'll cover them. So Raf says there's a new release for Ord 0.20.1, minor release, but comes with some noteworthy improvements. Namely, we've added multi-parent support to the wallet. You can now build complex family trees, even more complex than nature allows. That's a joke. That's maybe a German joke because Raf's German. And that basically means, you know how you can have the parent-child mechanism in Ordinals, where you have an input be an inscription, and then one of the outputs be an inscription, so your child inscription is associated with the parent inscription. Well, now you can have multiple parents, which is recognized in the client. This is already recognized on ordinals.com on the Explorer side, but now it is officially recognized in the client. That is the thing in command line that you might use, or that Raf and a lot of the Ordinals devs use. So this is really interesting. I personally am very excited for this. I've been concepting a collection like that uses multi-parent for a long time. You can also burn. You can do a wallet burn command that's added if you want to get really spicy. They improved the handbook. If you haven't checked out the Ordinals handbook in a while, I recommend that. Here's a link, docs.ordinals.com. And then the indexing of runes specifically has been improved. If you're not familiar with what indexing is, it's basically when you look at all the Bitcoin blocks and you say which of these relevant data to Ordinals or runes, we're going to go through all that and figure out which ones they are and index all those. So that process has been pretty computationally expensive, and the latest client improves on that. There's a bunch of other small releases and updates, so you'll have to just check the official GitHub for the full release notes. On another note, if you're still here and you're still watching this, I'm going to give you some more alpha. So, if you haven't been paying attention, Blockspace Media, we are launching our inaugural small technical conference in Boston, Massachusetts, next month on November 9th. It is called Op Next. OP_next. It is a scaling conference for Bitcoin builders, developers, and founders, and we have a stacked lineup. That's as much as I can even really say, because we have basically a who's who of the Bitcoin technical community. A lot of people who've not even been in the same room together in a long time, talking about how to fork Bitcoin. Both how to fork and then what to fork Bitcoin. If you are one of the OpCat people, if you're one of the Quantum Cat people, this is a very interesting conference for you, and I'm going to give you live here on air a discount code. So I recommend you go to opnext.dev. Again, it's November 9th, next month in Boston, Massachusetts. We have John Attack, Armin Sabor, Peter Todd, Pete Rizzo, Dan Gould, Reardon, Waking Chen, Ethan Hyland, Ryan Dell of the Wizards. We have Jeremy Rubin. We have Taj Dryja, the guy who invented Lightning. We have many, many more speakers at this conference. They're not even all posted yet because we've been adding a bunch of people really quickly. So if you're still listening, you can use the discount code, one word, all caps, Charlie. That's my name, CHARLIE. Use the discount code Charlie to get 30% off these tickets. Yes, I'm shilling you tickets to my conference. But also, like, if you are interested in Bitcoin technical discussion, you should come to this conference. If you have like a Bitcoin Ordinals dev or a Bitcoin dev that you think should be here, let us know. Send them here. If you're one of those, like they said, teams who's building in Ordinals and you have like a technical person, this is the conference to send them to. This is where all the best Bitcoin developers and Bitcoin technical minds will be, as well as many Bitcoin mining representatives and stakeholders. So check it out. Make sure to subscribe to all Blockspace media stuff. Blockspace.media is the website. Core Show, Mining Pod, Bitcoin Season 2. And I will see you all next week.